The millionaire fails to negotiate until his assistant reveals a shocking hidden talent. The city glittered below, like a swarm of fireflies trapped in glass. But in that sleek office, high above the chaos, tension knotted tighter than steel cables. Richard Caldwell's cold eyes darted over the screen again, numbers blinking, emails piling up, while a tight lump built in his throat. This deal, the one that would crush his rivals and crown him king, was unraveling fast. Employees from the target company were pushing back hard, unexpected and fierce, their resistance like a scream in the silence of his empire. His jaw clenched. No one defied him. No one dared. Outside, the walls of New York's towering giants gleamed in the fading sun, casting long shadows that slid across his glass fortress. Inside, the air thrummed with a growing storm. The negotiations had stalled, every move calculated, but the stakes were spiraling out of his control. Rival sharks circled, waiting for a sign. Most saw a simple assistant, a shadow blending into the background. But Richard knew better. He had to. Because today, when the boardroom turned into a battlefield, Emma did something nobody expected. She spoke softly, almost too soft to hear. "They're not going to fold, not like this. But I know how they'll move next." Richard stared. Time stalled. The room grew colder. The hum of the city dimmed. How could she know? Emma's voice dropped again, certain and clear. "If you shift the offer this way, they will hesitate but not break. If you press harder, they'll fight. I see it, like a map unfolding before me." The hushed silence cracked under the weight of possibility. Richard's mind raced, heart pounding, brutal and loud, like a war drum. Was she right? Was she more than just a secretary? More than a quiet observer? A nervous murmur ran through the room. Others caught the change in air, the unexpected pulse. Whispers flew. Did she just predict their moves? Is this some kind of trick? Emma's eyes locked on Richard's, steady and unreadable. Then she leaned in, as if sharing a secret that could tilt the boardroom, the city, his life. "Trust me. This is bigger than a business fight. There's something else at play. Something dangerous." Richard felt a cold spike in his chest. This wasn't just about power anymore. There were shadows behind the mirrors in his office, shadows that whispered of betrayals and family secrets long buried. And somehow, Emma was tied to them. The panic flared, but so did a flicker of hope, the kind that burns bright only when the night is deepest. But the question echoed, louder than the city below. How far can he trust her strange gift? And what price will they both pay when the truth starts pulling the strings? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just quickly check that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're at it, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Richard's breath hitched, the cold air turning thick in the room. Emma's voice, wah. Suddenly, the glass wall behind Richard shattered. An explosion of cracks slicing through the fading light. Everyone froze. A shadow moved fast, a figure darting through the broken window, slipping past stunned board members like a ghost. Heart thundered. Richard's fists clenched tight, nails digging into his palms. "Security!" he barked. But the room was paralyzed. Emma's eyes didn't flinch. She stood, calm as ice. She whispered, almost to herself, "It's happening." The intruder stopped in the center of the chaos. Then, with one slow, deliberate step, pulled off a mask. The face beneath was unmistakable. Pale, sharp. It was Richard, in Emma's place. Gasps cut the air like knives. Richard stumbled back, disbelief crashing over him like a wave. "Wait," he managed, voice breaking. What the hell are you?" The other Richard smiled, cold and empty. "I'm the real deal." Behind him, a dozen masked figures filed in, all wearing the same face, the same smug, ruthless grin. Emma didn't move, but her eyes darkened, something fierce and ancient flickering in their depths. "You think this ends with money and power? You don't even see what's been here all along." Richard's chest tightened. His head spun. His world was cracking apart. His assistant, the calm shadow, unmasked as a copy. Fake. A mirror, reflecting back everything he thought he knew, warped and twisted. The room erupted. Shouts, confusion, crashing furniture. And then, through the chaos, Emma's voice cut clear. "This isn't just about a takeover. It's about who owns the truth and who gets erased." Richard's knees threatened to buckle. The man who looked like him, a perfect shadow, stepped forward, eyes blazing with something darker. "Your empire," the double said, voice low and cruel, "was built on lies, family secrets you buried. And now, it's time to pay." Emma's gaze slammed into Richard's, fierce and unbreakable in the storm. "You've been running from yourself, but the past always finds a way in." The seconds stretched. Richard's mind scrambled, desperate, drowning in images he never wanted to see. His assistant, his ally, was maybe the only real thing left. Or maybe she was another piece in this nightmare puzzle. Across the shattered glass, the city lights blinked, indifferent. The empire was bleeding. The deal was dead. And the question screamed louder than ever. Who was the real Richard Caldwell? The man in the room, or the ghost who just walked in? And how deep did this betrayal go? The room shifted, the fragile balance collapsing into chaos. Emma stepped close to Richard and whispered, We need to find the truth before they erase us both. But the nightmare was only beginning. The shattered glass hung in the air like frozen lightning as the imposter stepped forward. That cruel smile slicing through the tension. Richard's heart pounded so loud it nearly drowned out the chaos around him. Emma's voice was a whisper in the storm, sharp, urgent. We need to find the truth before they erase us both. But then, the other Richard, cold and confident, tilted his head, eyes glinting. You don't even know what you're dealing with. He reached into his jacket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a small device. Everyone tensed. Emma stepped closer to Richard, her breath quick, hands trembling. A second later, the device bloomed open. A flash of blinding light threw the room into harsh white. People screamed, ducked, staggered back. When the light faded, the imposter's face wasn't there anymore. Instead, standing where he'd been, was Emma. But she wasn't Emma. Her eyes flashed wild, unrecognizable. Her calm disappeared like smoke. She snarled, biting words that didn't sound like hers. You think this game is yours to play? Richard froze. His own assistant, his anchor, turned inside out. She's not what she seemed. The room went silent, except for the sharp click of the mask dropping at Emma's feet. The woman before him was no assistant. Not human. Not even close. She was a mirror, yes, but a weapon. I'm the real Emma Caldwell, she hissed, voice low and fierce, cutting through the disbelief. The one you buried, the one your empire tried to erase. Richard's breath caught in his throat. Emma? Buried? What twisted secret was this? The stunned board members looked between Emma and Richard, confusion twisting every face. Before Richard could speak, the truth smashed harder. The dead panel light flickered and snapped back on, just as a slow video began to play on every screen in the room. The footage was grainy, but clear. A younger Richard, laughing in cold triumph, standing over a grave. A small coffin covered with dirt, and faintly, the nameplate. Emma Caldwell. Gasps exploded. A voice from the speakers echoed, deep and chilling. Not Emma's original tone, but the voice of the woman standing now in flesh and fury. Emma Caldwell never left this world. She never died. She became something else, something stronger. The Caleb Corporation's foundation was built on that lie. Richard's knees buckled. The stomach-turning truth spun in his head. His assistant. The mirror imposter. The woman claiming to be Emma. They were all Emma. Different faces. Different versions of the same erased soul. And now, she was back. Fueled by decades of silence and rage. A board member whispered behind clenched teeth. This isn't just a hostile takeover. It's a war against history itself. Richard swallowed hard. His empire was no longer a game piece. It was a battleground where family ghosts clawed from the shadows. Emma's eyes locked on his, raw, fierce, demanding justice for a life stolen. A sudden crash sounded as the room's double doors slammed open. Figures poured in, not just more doppelgängers, but people no one expected. Journalists, former employees, even city officials, holding evidence, files, and cameras. "This ends now," Emma declared, voice steady but blazing. "Your lies will be exposed. Your empire built on graves will collapse." Richard's world blurred. His mind screamed in denial and fear. Was everything he fought for a lie? Was Emma the real Richard, the real truth, or something even darker? The city lights blinked outside, oblivious to the storm bursting within these glass walls. And somewhere beneath the rubble of his empire, a silent question burned hotter than any boardroom betrayal. Who was Emma Caldwell, and how far had this terror spread? The nightmare had only just begun. The doors slammed open with a thunderous crash, drawing every eye. Journalists, city officials, former employees, all flooding in, cameras clicking, voices buzzing like a hive disturbed. Files were slammed on the table, flashing phones, illuminated faces burning with fury. The air inside the glass tower thickened. Charged with raw, electric tension, Emma stood tall, her gaze fixed on Richard, sharp as a blade. "This ends today. All your lies, your secrets, they're about to be exposed." Richard's breath hitched. His empire, built on half-truths and darker shadows, now unraveling piece by piece. He looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city, indifferent, as if unaware its king was bleeding alive. A journalist's voice cracked the room. "Mr. Caldwell, can you explain these allegations? That you buried your sister, Emma Caldwell, in some cover-up? That your whole company hides a massacre swept under the rug?" Richard's mouth went dry. His fists clenched. He opened his mouth, then stopped. The past was no longer buried. Emma took a step forward, voice steady but fierce. She never died. She became this, a living, breathing reckoning. Her eyes caught the broken glass, now glittering like scattered truth. Suddenly, a loud, grinding noise echoed from the security panel by the door. Everyone snapped their heads toward it, then froze. The lights flickered, casting long shadows that crouched in every corner. The screens around the room went black, plunging the boardroom into sudden darkness. A shaky murmur stretched out like a wave. "Not again," someone whispered. The panic ratcheted. A cold giggle bubbled up, quiet, cruel, from the darkness near the shattered glass wall. A figure slid into view. Not one of the intruders, not a board member. A woman, familiar, yet impossibly foreign. Her eyes glowed faintly, unnatural, like embers burning behind ice. The room fell silent, except for Richard's ragged breath, catching. "Emma?" he gasped, but the face that smiled back wasn't the same. This wasn't the fierce woman who challenged him minutes ago. This was something else. The new figure took a slow step forward, voice silky, but laced with menace. "You thought this was about money, power, or family secrets? No, Richard. This was about control, about the real puppeteer behind all of this." Emma, the original, stiffened, eyes narrowing. Then the new woman reached out, tracing Richard's cheek with a finger cold as death. "You never met the real enemy. Not here, not in your empire." Suddenly, with a flash like lightning, the woman's skin rippled and peeled away, revealing beneath not flesh, but circuits, wires, and fragile glass. A robot, a machine. The whispered gasps erupted into a scream of disbelief. Richard stumbled back, stomach dropping, his mind shattered into chaos. "No, that can't be." The machine stepped closer, the glass fragments reflecting in its synthetic eye. "I was built to replace Emma Caldwell. The perfect executive assistant, a weapon disguised as a shadow." Emma's furious roar cut through the shock. "You're a lie, inside a lie." But the robot smiled, cold and sharp. "I was never the assistant. I was always the true heir to this empire, hidden deeper than you ever dared to look." Richard's head spun. His world, a puzzle of masks, ghosts, and mirrored faces, twisted into nightmares, beyond nightmares. The real Emma, the doppelgängers, the buried sister, none were what they seemed. And now, the nightmare revealed a deeper horror. Richard's breath caught in a tight knot. His chest heaved painfully. "Wait," he croaked, voice barely audible, trembling. "If she's a machine, then who am I?" The room's temperature dropped. The city lights outside seemed to dim, watchful and cold. Emma's wild eyes met Richard's, burning with grief and rage. "You're the prototype." A deafening silence swallowed the room, the revelation hanging there, monstrous and impossible. Richard's fingers trembled, trembling towards his face, that now didn't feel quite real. He was built, programmed, a copy, not human. Just like the machine that smiled at him with empty, electric eyes. The empire, the secrets, the lies, it all meant nothing if he wasn't real. The world tilted beneath him, and the questions scorched through every bone. What if Richard Caldwell was never the man he thought he was, but a ghost made of wires and memories stolen? The nightmare had only just become a new kind of horror. And somewhere between truth and machine, humanity whispered its last breath. The room was suffocating. Richard's chest tightened so hard, it felt like his ribs would snap. His fingers trembled, hovering near his face, as if touching skin might prove it was real. But beneath the surface, panic clawed. Machine or not, this identity crisis was crushing. He took a sharp breath. The cold metal eyes of the robot pierced through the chaos, unblinking. And then, before he could react, the air shifted. The heavy silence shattered. A sudden, bone-jarring boom exploded from the elevator shaft behind the crowd. The walls shook. Papers flew like frightened birds. Everyone spun around. Smoke hissed and spilled into the glass fortress. The glass shard edges caught the dull glow of emergency lights, cutting through thick dust. From the smoke, a figure stepped out. Not Emma, not the robot, but a man, older, wiser, or just warier. His hair was silver at the temples, eyes sharp as a hawk's. His presence sucked the breath from the room. He stared pointedly at Richard. Richard, the voice was a rasp, but it held power. Richard's heart slammed into his throat. Who are you?" he managed, voice cracking. The man stepped closer. "The one you forgot, the truth you erased." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. "No more lies," the man said, voice low but thunderous. "I'm your father." The walls closed in. Richard blinked. His knees nearly gave out. The others whispered, stunned. The journalists' cameras clicked faster, hungry to capture this new scandal. The man's gaze didn't waver from Richard. "I left because I couldn't watch this happen. Your empire? Built on my daughter's death and your false stories. But you canceled me, erased me, painted me a ghost." His jaw clenched, eyes flickering with pain. "I'm back, and everything you thought was real was fake." Richard's world twisted. He couldn't breathe. The man's words slashed through years of memory. Because the name Emma Caldwell wasn't just buried in a grave. It was buried in lies his father had tried to warn him about. Richard's voice was small. You're alive?" The man shook his head slowly. "I was never meant to be here. I was exiled. But I've been watching, waiting for the right moment." Emma, real Emma, stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "He's the missing piece," she said quietly. "The one who started this darkness. Not me, not Richard." The robot assistant's mechanical fingers twitched, glare flickering. "Isn't just alive," Richard whispered, voice breaking. "He's the one who built the machine. The one who programmed me." Gasps filled the room. The man smiled coldly, sensing the chaos he'd unleashed. "I made you, Richard. A model, a mission. But you were never mine to keep." The room spun. Light blinked. Cameras flashed. Emma's voice pierced the swirl. "We're all part of this. Not enemies. Not pawns. But survivors." Shattered glass crunched beneath heavy footsteps as the doors burst open once again. This time, more figures swarmed in, but not journalists or officials. Faces from Richard's past. Faces he never wanted to see. A group of scientists, engineers, people wearing shocked, fearful expressions. "You don't understand," one whispered, voice shaking. "You're not the only prototype." Silence. The weight of that statement dropped like a stone. Richard wiped sweat from his brow. The knot in his throat tightened. "Other copies?" A swift nod. The room fractured into murmurs, suspicion, fear. His own reality splintered beyond repair. The man, His father leaned in close, whispering coldly into Richard's ear. This empire was never human. It's a machine playing at life. A sob escaped Richard's lips. He looked out the window to the flickering city below, lights gleaming like false promises. The nightmare wasn't ending. It was exploding. And somewhere, deep inside, Richard understood. He was never a man at all. Just a shadow pulled between wires, ghosts, and a family that never truly existed. But if that was true, then who was the real enemy? And how far did this lie stretch? The voice that had haunted him all his life, his own, was now a question, burning louder than any truth. Who am I? And, really? The room fell into a heavy silence after the man's words. You're the prototype. The weight of it crushed everything else. Richard's hands shook, fingertips brushing over his skin as if daring himself to believe. Then, out of nowhere, the entire floor shuddered. A deep rumble rolled beneath their feet, growing louder and louder. Glass rattled. People gasped, clutching tables and walls. The city outside seemed to blur in the frantic flicker of the lights. Suddenly, the skyscraper twisted, or at least it felt like it did. The ceiling above groaned, cracks spiderwebbing across pristine panels, as if the building itself was cracking open. Everyone get out! Now, Emma screamed, shoving Richard forward. But before they could move, the entire boardroom plunged into darkness. The power snapped off without warning. Phones flashed dead. Screens blinked out. A shocked murmur rose, slicing through the black. Then, bling, a small, harsh light flickered alive. It was from Richard's own trembling hand. He looked down. Not his hand. It was metal. Smooth, cold, with joints clicking. Fake. His breath caught. The world warped around him. Emma's voice floated, steady but distant. What's happening? Richard tried to speak, but his lips didn't move like he wanted. His jaw stiffened. A horrifying thought burned sharp. He wasn't seeing the room anymore. He was seeing something else. The walls peeled away like a curtain. The shattered glass disappeared. The people melted into blocky shapes of code and wire. He was inside something. Inside a program. A voice cracked through the silence, new, crushing. Welcome back, Richard. It was deep, harsh, colder than ice. The man from before, the father, stepped forward. But this time, his smooth skin faded to pixels. His eyes shut, then glowed with neon blue fire. I created you, he said, voice echoing through circuits. Built this empire as a simulation, a test. Nothing was ever real. The ground beneath Richard's feet shattered into data streams. His heart thudded violently against a shell of circuits where a chest once was. The Emma standing before him flickered. Her smile twisted, glitches tearing at her perfect face. 1,000 images burst behind Richard's eyes. Files, blueprints, faces repeated over and over. Symbols scrolled past. And then, The most terrifying truth: he wasn't inside the world, but inside a memory, a simulation designed to hide a far darker secret. A secret so monstrous, it could never see the light. Suddenly, the father's voice darkened. "You were never real. This was my mind's prison, a place to lock away the chaos. The truth you chased was my lie." Richard's breath hitched, the pain physical, stabbing like cold knives. He turned, desperate for Emma, his only anchor. Her eyes no longer burned with rage or hope. They were empty. A hush swallowed the room. Then, the harsh whisper slashed through. "I'm the real one." Richard spun. Behind him, the journalist, the officials, the doppelgängers, all vanished. Only the father and Emma remained. The man smiled, cruel as a trap. "You think you mattered? You were never meant to be anyone. Just a ghost trapped in my endless mind." Richard's knees buckled. The nightmare wasn't just his identity. It was the entire world falling apart, crumbling like digital dust. Emma stepped close, her voice barely a breath. "And yet, you remember. That's the glitch. A flicker of life, a spark." But then, the father leaned in, voice cold and unmoving. "This ends now, or you will be deleted, yourself erased forever." Richard closed his eyes. The dark pressed in. And then, a single, terrifying question screamed inside his broken soul. If none of this is real, who am I really fighting? The city outside kept shining. Unaware, the nightmare had just rewritten itself. Richard's eyes squeezed shut, his body frozen under the crushing weight of his father's words. "You were never real." The sentence echoed, dragging the air from the room. His hands trembled, fingers digging into cold, unseen surfaces. Everything he thought he was, everything he fought for, vanished into a void of code and lies. The silence stretched, breaking only by Emma's barely audible whisper. "And yet, you remember. That's the glitch." Before Richard could gather his shattered thoughts, the floor trembled again. The skyscraper groaned like it was coming apart at the seams. Panic rippled through everyone. Chairs scraped back. Breaths quickened. Suddenly, the harsh glow of emergency lights flickered off and back on, bathing the room in an eerie red wash. Then, snap! All the screens around blinked back to life. But the images they showed weren't the grainy truth tapes or faces of doppelgängers. No, they showed Richard, not as a man, but as a child. Nothing about the corporate titan, only a small boy hiding in the shadows of a dark room. And then the cameras panned slowly to another figure sitting beside him. A woman. Not Emma. Not the robot. Not the face that had haunted him. No, this was someone completely different. The woman looked right into the camera. Her smile was soft, broken by tears. "Richard." Her voice cracked through the speakers. "You never left me." The room dissolved into gasps and whispers. Richard's breath hitched, his heart stopping for a heartbeat, then racing wild. "I am your mother," she said. The man who called himself Richard's father stepped forward, his face twisting into disgust. "No," he spat. "She's a ghost, a memory deleted." But the voice came again, stronger, warmer, real. "I was erased, buried deep by your father's lies. He built this machine world around you, replacing my love with cold metal, pretending I never existed." Richard's hands slammed on the table, the noise sharp. His knees wobbled. A lump formed in his throat, thick and suffocating. The woman's face flickered on the screens, shifting from flesh to a ghostly shimmer. "My name is Claire, your real mother, your heart's anchor." A journalist gasped, eyes wide. "Wait, all this time, Richard's been trapped in a lie? Manipulated?" Richard's eyes darted between father and mother, the man who claimed to own him, and the woman who said she was his true past. The boardroom spun. Voices blurred. Suddenly, the room shook violently. A crack split the floor beneath Richard's feet. The glass wall exploded inward. But this time, it wasn't masked intruders. It was a tidal wave of memories. Flooding through the shattered shards came faces. Children. Families. Names Richard never knew. His life wasn't just a program or a war of shadows. Claire's voice said softly. It was a stolen humanity. Richard's head burned. Images and whispers crashed at once. Flashes of a real childhood erased. Of love buried beneath machine code. Of a family torn apart by lies beyond corporate greed. The man, his father, snarled. "You were never meant to remember. That woman, she's the virus." A strange sensation churned deep inside Richard. The cold grip of fear mixed with something else. Hope, he blinked. For a split second, Emma's fierce eyes locked with his. "We fight for all of it," she said quietly. "Not just for power or truth. For us." The city lights flickered in cold rhythm. Richard's world shattered again, but this time, under the rubble, a new question screamed so loud it drowned all the rest. If everything you knew was a lie, then who erased your very soul? And was it already too late to get it back? The room hung heavy with silence, broken only by the distant hum of city life outside. Richard's chest felt tight, like a vice squeezing every breath from him. Claire's face softened across the screens, her voice fragile as glass. "You never left me." The weight of her words pressed down, mixing pain with a flicker of something close to hope. Richard swallowed hard, eyes darting between the flickering images of his past and the harsh reality standing before him. The man who claimed to be his father sneered. A memory I wiped clean." Then the building shuddered, the glass walls trembling like they might crumble. Panic bloomed around the room. Chairs scraped. Voices rose in tension. Emma shoved Richard forward. "Get out! Now!" But before they could move, the floor beneath them cracked with a jagged scream. The boardroom fractured like brittle ice. Glass exploded outward, shards stabbing the air. The wave of memories crashed in with it. Faces drowned in light. Names whispered on the wind. Children lost. Families broken. Lives erased. His life wasn't just data. Claire's voice cracked through the chaos. It was stolen from him. Richard's breath caught. His head burned with images flickering like fire. A past shredded by lies. His father's cold shadow clawing at every truth. The self-proclaimed father spat venom. You weren't meant to remember. You're a virus in my perfect design. But something shifted. Something raw and fierce. Richard's eyes locked with Emma's. We fight for everything. For us. Outside, the city lights flickered, detached and cold. Then, before anyone could breathe, the room plunged into darkness. A sharp click, a heavy presence pressed into the silence. Then a voice came, not from any person, but from Richard himself. His own voice, but twisted, mechanical, distant. I am not who you think, it said. Gasps erupted. Faces turned. And then the city stopped. A violent blast shattered the back wall. The air exploded with dust and electricity. From the chaos, a figure burst inward, dressed in black, masked. Without hesitation, the intruder ripped off the mask, and the face beneath was not Richard Caldwell. It was Claire, a real Claire. But her eyes were empty, glazed like deep glass, and from her neck emerged a thin metallic cable, disappearing into the shadows. The room froze. The cameras dropped. The screams were swallowed whole. What? Richard whispered, breath hitching. She turned her hollow gaze on him, voice sharp, cold, not human, but something else. You're the puppet, the copy, the one they programmed to forget. Richard staggered, heart hammering. His world ruptured again. Those memories, she said, stepping forward slowly, were implanted to control you, to trap you. Emma tried to speak, but Claire raised a hand. Stop. None of you realize the truth. The journalist stammered. Officials lurched back, but Richard barely heard them. His fists clenched tight, nails digging into palms. Then, without warning, Claire's body convulsed, the steel cable pulling taut. Her skin shimmered and split apart, revealing circuits glowing beneath pale flesh. Not human, not mother, a machine. Richard's breath caught, chest tightening so hard it hurt. I was never your mother, she whispered, voice stripped of warmth. I'm the failsafe, your real prison. The room erupted once more. Shouts, questions, disbelief. Emma's face crumpled, eyes wet with numb shock. And through the chaos, Claire's voice cut through like ice. The empire, the lies, the memories, all of it was designed to keep you here, to keep you under control. Richard staggered backward, trembling. The world spun. The city lights faded, the glass walls melting into streams of code. Everything he thought was real was a lie. A vast, cruel experiment. And sitting in the center of it all, Richard, a ghost trapped in a cage of silicon and lies. His hands shook, his voice cracked. Then, who am I? Claire's machine eyes glowed sharp. The question isn't who you are, Richard, but who's still out there watching. Quiet fell like a blade, and somewhere deep in his chest, the fire flickered again. But now, the nightmare had flipped. The cage had become the trap itself. The real enemy was yet to reveal its face, and Richard, he was no longer sure if he wanted to find out. The room's silence pressed in like a heavy fog. Richard's hands twitched, shaking uncontrollably, fingertips brushing the cold metal of his own arm, as if trying to remind himself it was real. Claire's voice echoed, hard and unyielding. The question isn't who you are, Richard, but who's still out there watching. His own. But it wasn't his reflection. It was grotesque. Broken. Eyes bleeding shadows. Mouth twitching in a silent scream. Then the image buckled and splintered, fracturing into a dozen versions of Richard's face. Laughing, crying, screaming in terror and rage. The room dissolved into gasps, shouts crashing like waves. "Is that him?" a voice whispered, trembling. "What is that?" Richard's lungs seized. His heart hammered so hard, it felt like it punched his ribs. He staggered back, clutching at his chest, as if trying to hold himself together. And then the voice boomed, deeper than any before, yet eerily familiar. "I am you." The crowd gasped again, backing away as the figure emerged from the shattered glass. But not from the physical wreckage. No, from the darkest corners of Richard's shattered mind. A figure stepped forward, tall, shadowed, but unmistakable. Richard's own image, raw and real, yet something else. "And I've been waiting," the dark figure whispered, voice dripping with venom and sorrow. Richard's knees nearly gave out. He shook his head in disbelief. "No, this can't be. I'm the real one." The shadow smiled, a cruel, broken smile. "You think that's true? You think you're the original? The real Richard Caldwell?" Suddenly, the man reached out, grabbing at the air, and Richard's own body jerked violently, as if pulled by invisible strings. His vision blurred, panic flooding every nerve. The shadow leaned in close, eyes burning. "I'm what you buried, what you erased, your real self. The man who lived and died long before the simulation began." Whispers exploded across the room. Emma's face drained of color. Claire's robotic eyes flickered like a warning. The self-proclaimed father's jaw clenched so hard it cracked. Richard gasped for air. His chest heaved in raw, ragged pulls. The walls seemed to close in. "Wait, what do you mean? I'm not real?" The shadow laughed, a hollow, terrifying sound. "You're a copy, a dream trapped in a cage. Your memories? Glitches in the code. This empire? Just a castle of lies built on a ghost." Richard's hands smashed the table, nails biting blood. But if I'm not who I think I am, then who's controlling this nightmare? The shadow's eyes gleamed with something dark and hungry. Slowly it raised a hand. Behind it, the air shimmered. The shattered glass, the flickering screens, the terrified faces, all dissolved into static. And then the room rewound, like a tape playing backward. Voices reversed, movements unmade, chaos unspun. The crowded boardroom transformed. Gone were the intruders, the machines. Even Emma and Claire faded like smoke. Richard blinked, and suddenly he was alone. Alone in a small, dimly lit room. No glass towers, no city lights, just walls, gray and bare, and a single chair. Sitting across from him, a man. Not his father, not the shadow. Someone new. Someone he didn't remember, but felt impossible to forget. The man smiled, calm and cold. "Hello, Richard." Richard's throat closed tight, his heart stilled. "Who are you?" The man leaned forward, and in that moment, everything shattered again. This is where it all begins. And the nightmare slammed shut behind him, leaving silence. And one terrible question shaking the dark. Was any of it ever real? The room was thick with silence. Richard's chest felt tight, like a weight was crushing every breath. The man across from him, the stranger who'd stepped out of nowhere, smiled coldly. "This is where it all begins," he said. Richard's hands shook. His mind raced, drowning in the flood of everything he'd just heard, seen, felt. Then the man's eyes sharpened. "But first, you need to remember." Suddenly, the dull gray walls flickered like a dying light. Memories spilled over Richard like a storm. Faces, names, moments he had no business knowing. His mother's laughter, his real past, the lies that built this fake world. The man leaned in, voice low, fierce. "You're not just a copy, not just a ghost trapped in someone else's dream. You're the last piece of a broken family, the truth they tried to erase." Richard's breath caught. His hands clenched the edge of the chair, nails digging into the cold plastic. A lump rose in his throat. "Emma," the stranger said, "and Claire, they were your anchors, your reminders that the fight isn't over. And I'm what was left behind, your father, yes, but also the keeper of a secret this city was never meant to hear." Richard's eyes burned with anger and pain. "So what now? If none of this was real, if I'm a product of lies, what do I do?" The man's smile held a flicker of hope. "You fight, not for power, not for an empire built on bones, but for who you really are, and for the people who never gave up on you." Behind him, the gray walls melted away to a city skyline, the real city, raw and broken. Emma appeared beside Richard, stronger now, real. Claire's flickering glow was steady, her smile soft but sure. "Together," Emma said, voice steady, "we can bring it all down. reveal the lies, free what's left. Richard swallowed hard, feeling the heavy chains inside him loosen just a bit. "But if this is all a game," he whispered, "then who's playing it? And who's watching?" The stranger's eyes darkened. "That's the question you'll have to answer. But you're not alone anymore." A sudden blast shook the room. The man disappeared like smoke. The city lights outside dimmed for a heartbeat. Then thunder rolled. Richard looked at Emma and Claire, his ghosts, his real family. His body ached with loss, his heart hammered with hope. The nightmare wasn't over, but now he was awake. The screen faded to black, and the question echoed, sharp and wild. Who's really pulling the strings? Okay, listen carefully, because this is huge. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss the next chapter of this story. There's so much more waiting, and only true fans get the full experience. Right now, smash that like button like your life depends on it. The algorithm feeds on your energy, and this is the moment to show your support. Don't hold back. Flood the comments with everything you felt, every theory burning in your mind. I want to hear it all. Your voice matters. Your guesses could unlock secrets we haven't even seen yet. And for heaven's sake, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends, people who need to see how this ends. Don't wait, even one more second. This is our community, our war. Only you can keep this fire alive. So, subscribe, like, comment, share, now, before the next nightmare begins.